Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Classic Comics live stream. Thank you for dropping by to give a listen, and that includes people who are going to be listening on the rewatch. Hold on. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay. So tonight I'm going to be talking about Ant-Man Quantumania and some of the issues I have with the movie because there's a lot in it that just doesn't make any sense. And then, in addition to that, I also want to talk about Star Trek Picard, particularly the first episode. So, I put my review of Ant-Man Quantumania up on the channel earlier today, so I hope you'll go check that out. But there were some things I overlooked that I didn't talk about in the review that I wanted to speak of. Now, I assume that most of you have seen it or have at least seen the trailers. And let me bring that up here. So I assume you know the basic plot, Ant-Man and the Wasp and his daughter and Janet and Hank all get sucked down into the quantum realm and they meet Kang and all this other stuff. But there are some things that just don't add up. I mean, really, one of the big questions and big issues I have with it is that for some reason, Janet just refuses to tell them what has happened. It down to her down in the quantum realm. So she spends many years down there, and she meets Kang, right? But for some reason, when she come out in the last movie, in between the last movie and this, she has never mentioned Kang at all. Never told them any about what happened to her down there. And which is why this whole movie happens, because Hank and the daughter, they make this device to map the quantum realm, right? It sends a signal down into the quantum realm, and as a result of that, they all wind up getting sucked down into the quantum realm by Kang. If she had just warned them, that, oh, hey, yeah, by the way, there's this other universe down there in the quantum realm, and it's ruled by this genocidal despot, so we might want to avoid that place and not go there. Then maybe Hank and the daughter wouldn't have made this device, and then none of this would have happened. Of course, if they had, then the movie wouldn't have happened. So she has to not tell them, which is kind of lazy, right? And the thing is, if you remember, at the end of the second Ant-Man movie, after she comes back at the end of the movie, what are they doing? They send Scott down into the quantum realm to explore. Well, why didn't she say anything then? you know and of course it's him being down in the quantum realm that allows him to avoid getting snapped, I guess, and then come back in game and help fix everything. So why didn't they ever mention any of that? Okay, whatever. Now, let's see what else we got here. um okay, so we've got Hank Pym. At the beginning of the movie, he's doing these experiments with ants, right? And he's having these ants perform research. I mean, how the ants are doing research, I don't know. He just gives this sort of blithe response that ants are pretty smart. I mean, smart enough to perform science experiments? Okay. Anyway, this ant colony he's experimenting on gets pulled down with him. Now, towards the end of the movie, you find out that these ants landed in a part of the quantum realm where time flows differently. And so thousands of years have passed for these ants. And in that time, they've built this whole civilization, even though the characters only seem to be down there for like a day or two at most. But in that time, these ants have progressed, technologically and all that. Now, when Hank is telling them about this, it shows him going to see the civilization they've built. So doesn't that mean that he was in this place where time is distorted and flowing more quickly, where basically years literally pass like seconds? And if that's the case, shouldn't he have died like of old age almost immediately when he came in there? I don't know, whatever. But somehow he didn't. That's another thing that I found just a little ridiculous. Let's see. Then yeah, Hank should have aged a lot. So what else have I got here? Okay, so another thing. So Kang, there's a MacGuffin, basically this power battery that's going to power his time ship and help him escape the quantum realm. And once he gets it, he puts it in the ship and he's all ready to go. And he has all his troops assembled and he's about to lead them out of the quantum realm to wage war on the multiverse or whatever. Now, Cassie escapes from her cell and frees this other prisoner. Then they go to this broadcasting or communication center and they broadcast this message where they urge these rebels who have been resisting Kang's regime to rise up and fight. And Cassie says, like, I know you're scared, but now's the perfect time. There's never been a better time to rise up and fight him than now. And I'm thinking, really? I mean, his armies are all right there. His armies are all armed and assembled and all his ships, and they're all there ready to go. This seems like the worst time to attack him. But again, she just says, come and get killed anyway. Then let's see. What is the other issue here? Modoc. I mean, I kind of covered that in my review. I mean, Modoc's just kind of treated as a joke. It's kind of pathetic. He just doesn't look good. The CGI doesn't look good, and he's just mainly treated as a clown. Another thing about Kang. So Kang's his motivations and everything is just really broadly kind of sketched. And it seems like it's obvious they just want to save this stuff for later because this whole movie's just a setup for another thing. It looks like season 2 of Loki, and I'm sure season 2 of Loki is going to be a setup for a movie or something. But I mean, he's had some kind of conflict with some of the other Kangs. There's all these different Kangs in the multiverse, and but it's never really made clear why. They banished him down into the quantum realm because he was too dangerous or something, but it's never explained why exactly. And he wants to get out of there and go wage this war, but who exactly? Other Kangs, I guess. I don't know. Let's see, what else have we got here? Uh, okay, so there are versions of Kang that didn't get mentioned in here. So Kang, he has a lot of different guises in the comics. One of them I was a little disappointed they didn't show was this one called the Scarlet Centurion, which was unfortunate. Scarlet Centurion's kind of a cool character, and I would like to have seen him appear in the movie, but unfortunately he didn't. All right, what else have we got? Yeah, so Janet. All right, so Janet withholds all this information. And it's because of her withholding this information that all of this happens. Yet it seems like so Kang captures Scott and Cassie, right? And then he uses Cassie as a hostage to make Scott go get this power source that he wants. Once he gets it, Janet's then they cross his path with Janet, and Janet's like, you can't trust him, you can't give it to him, blah, blah, blah. And, I would just wished someone would just turn to her and say, look, bitch, the whole reason we're down here is because of you. If you just warned us about this, none of this would have happened and we wouldn't even fricking be here. And besides, this guy's holding my daughter hostage. So don't tell me what to do. And of course, at the end, it's like the movie puts it all on him, like it's somehow all his responsibility. And Janet, even though she's the main issue here and the main reason this all happens, the movie doesn't place any blame on her at all. It's really frustrating. Okay, I think those are the main issues I overlooked when I was reviewing Picard. So I'm going to talk about, or I'm sorry, reviewing Ant-Man. I'm sorry, reviewing Ant-Man. So I'm going to talk about Picard for a minute. So the first episode of this new season of Star Trek Picard started this week, and I have done a video about that too. It's not a review because I haven't watched it. But I want to talk about it because I've watched several videos of other people talking about the episode and what happens in it. And just from listening to other people talking about it, it seems to me like this episode has several issues to it. So I guess it starts out, and I'm not going to talk about the stuff that happens early on, like when Picard gets the signal from Beverly, and apparently it's encrypted in some way, and there's this whole BS of how they have to unencrypt it. And then they go to a bar, and there's a bunch of models on sale, and but no one wants the Enterprise D, because the Enterprise D sucks or something like that, which just seems like mocking the Next Generation series, but whatever. So Picard and Riker, they want to go find Beverly because they've gotten this message from her that she needs help, but they don't have a ship, right? Now, in the episode, what apparently they wind up doing is they decide to basically commandeer a Starfleet ship. What they plan to do is go onto a Starfleet ship and basically trick the commander into thinking that their presence there is part of some surprise inspection that's coming before some sort of, there's this holiday coming up, Frontier Day, and I think there's some sort of maneuvers the fleet is going to go through, like, I don't know, war games or something before it happens, and they're coming on the ship to pretend that it's related to that or something, it seems like. Okay, why even do that? In the first season of Picard, when he wanted to go out into space, he went to Starfleet and asked for a ship, and Starfleet turned him down. So then he hires that guy, Ramos, or whatever his name is, and his ship, the Serena, or whatever it's called. Okay, so why don't they just hire another ship? Why all this business with trying to trick a Starfleet commander into taking them where they want to go? Why don't they just hire a ship? And don't tell me that they can't freaking afford it, okay? Because I've heard too much about how there's no money in this time period, and economics of our time don't apply, and basically everybody has all they need in all this. So they could get a friggin' ship. Now, I guess you could argue maybe there isn't one available in the time frame or something. I don't know. But anyway, so they decide to go try and pull off this plan of tricking a Starfleet captain into taking them there. So they decide to go on board a Starfleet vessel called the USS Titan, Titan A specifically. Now, this whole thing, and this is very sort of nerdy and kind of nitpicky, but I mean, nitpicking is what Star Trek fans do. Okay. So the ship's called the Titan A. And it's also, the ship is basically an updated Constitution class ship. I mean, it's obviously that's what it's supposed to be. Now, first of all, to me, it just seems like updating the Constitution class doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, the Constitution class in the original series was basically a heavy cruiser. It was a capital ship. It was your top of the line cruiser that was sort of able to take on a variety of tasks. It could do exploration, it could be a frontline defender along the borders, and it could also be like an evacuation ship and take refugees somewhere because it had lots of room. And it also would ferry dignitaries, from place to place and be a site for meetings and stuff like that. So when the Constitution class, now it got refit in the movies, then eventually it was retired and replaced by the Excelsior class, which took up the Constitution class's role. That was later replaced with the Ambassador class, which was then replaced with the Galaxy class, which was the Enterprise D. That was replaced with the Sovereign class, the Enterprise E in the next gen movies. And that then was replaced by the Enterprise F. I don't even remember what class that is. So the job that the Constitution class ships used to do is now being done by these much larger ships. So why update the Constitution class? The job that it did back then really it can't do that job anymore. I mean, or it could, I guess, but there are plenty of other ships that can do it better. So why update a Constitution class anyway? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And on top of that, again, it's named the Titan A, which also doesn't make a whole lot of sense because they obviously called it Titan A because in a lot of the extended lore, Riker, after he leaves the Enterprise, he takes command of this ship called the Titan. And he commanded it for several years. But the Titan A wasn't like one of those top of the line cruisers like a Sovereign class or something. The Luna class, which is what the Titan was a smaller ship, and it was more of a deep space exploration type vessel. That's really what it was dedicated to. It wasn't this sort of jack of all trades, be able to do everything well cruiser. So then why take, so if you're going to have another Titan, have it given to a ship that does that job, some sort of updated Luna class. Why then give it to this Constitution class? Again, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Okay. Then what else? Okay, so they get on board the Titan A. And conveniently, the Titan A's first officer is Seven of Nine, who, of course, has been in previous seasons of Picard. Now, the captain of the Titan A is this guy named Captain Shaw. And he makes it clear right away that he doesn't like Riker and Picard. Why does he not like them? I mean, it's kind of, for some reason or another, he views the crew of the Enterprise, Picard, Riker, and the others, as cowboys or something like that. He basically kind of characterizes them as these space cowboys who shoot from the hip and they just caused chaos and destruction everywhere they went. Well, I mean, if you watch the show, that's just so obviously not what they are. It's such a skewed and just inaccurate portrayal of them that it just doesn't. I mean, it feels very contrived to me, this whole conflict he has with them. And second, I mean, even if they were okay, he may not approve, but why is he being so hostile? Like for instance, he invites them to dinner, but then he starts having dinner before they show up, which is kind of like, a slight. And then after dinner, he gives them quarters, but he sticks them in these standard crew quarters that have bunk beds. When that ship's going to have plenty of nice quarters for dignitaries and stuff like that he could give them. So why is he giving them this treatment? It just, his hostility just doesn't really fit with these rather vague criticisms he has. Again, it just feels very contrived to me, and it rings very false. Now, personally, this is just my opinion. Now, I've always felt that in the Next Generation series, after the Best of Both Worlds took place, we never really saw enough of Picard receiving hostility from other members of Starfleet. The only time we ever really saw it was in the pilot of Deep Space Nine, where Picard meets Cisco. And he's like, "Oh, have we met before?" And Cisco's like, "Yeah, motherfucker, we met before when you killed my wife." And that's really it. That was the only time we saw it. So, I mean, there were hints here and there, like in oh, hey, J-Man. Didn't watch any of Picard. Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched it either. I'm just talking about, I've seen a couple of scenes and I've heard other people review it and talk about it. And just from what they've said, it's like, it's obvious this episode has serious problems. I don't understand why people are saying it's so well written. It kind of baffles me. But now we got hints of that in, I think in, was it First Contact? When there's that Borg attack and the Enterprise is told to stay out and patrol the neutral zone and not approach because Starfleet doesn't really trust Picard around the Borg. But that's really it. Now, I don't know exactly how many ships were destroyed at the Battle of Wolf 359, but I mean, in the episode, I think they say it's like half the fleet or something. At some point, I think it was said that half the fleet was destroyed. Now, that's probably an exaggeration. But I mean, how many ships are in Starfleet? Now, when you think about the amount of territory they got to cover, I'm guessing they've got thousands of ships. So if you've got, I mean, even a fourth of that, Even say a quarter of the fleet got destroyed. You're talking about hundreds of ships. Each of those ships having hundreds, possibly thousands of people on board. So the number of people, the number of Starfleet personnel killed at Wolf 359. So Jamin says, I trust Klobby. He was not impressed at all. I think everyone was just excited to see the crew again. Nostalgia glasses. Yeah, I think that might be part of it. I'm going to talk about that, why I think people are kind of being so kind to the show. Again, I think you're right. It's somewhat nostalgia and member berries. But so you've got the number of people who must have been killed at the Battle of Wolf 359 at a minimum has got to be in the low five figures, like maybe 10,000 or more, something like that. Now, presumably each one of those people has at least friends in Starfleet, at the very least people they've known at the academy. So you're talking about probably tens of thousands of people who lost, at the very least, lost a friend at Wolf 359, if not maybe a family member or something like that, like Cisco did. So there really should have been a lot more, I think, a lot more hostility from other people in Starfleet towards Picard after that. But we never really saw that. I think this episode would have worked a lot better if that had been the reason why Shaw dislikes Picard so much. Maybe he had a brother, or well, actually, these days it would be a sister. He had a sister who was at the academy and was the bestest cadet ever, I'm sure. And she she graduated at the top of her class, and her first assignment was on like the USS Melbourne or something like that. And then a couple of weeks later, bam, Wolf 359, and she's killed. And Shaw has never really gotten over it, and he's never forgiven Picard and still holds it against him. I think that would make a lot more sense than what they did, because again, his hostility towards Picard and Riker just doesn't seem to really hold up to any scrutiny. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because he levels these criticisms that are clearly just not accurate. Okay, then what else was there? Let me see here. Okay, so after they ask Shaw to take the Titan A to this system where they think Beverly is. He refuses and sends them, to their quarters or whatever. Now later he goes to sleep. Shaw does, and then while he's asleep, Seven of Nine talks with them. Brian Hepburn says, so Norris At said 39 of the 40 ships were lost in the drumhead when she was questioning Picard. Okay, so 39 ships. Okay. So 39. But you're still probably 39. Now, like say a Galaxy class ship has like what? Like a few thousand people on it. So, and I'm sure Nebula class have a few thousand. I mean, you're still getting over 10,000 easily. So, 7 and 9 talks with Picard and Riker, and they explain everything. So she takes command of the ship, and she sends it there anyway. Basically, I mean, I don't. I mean, it might be a little strong to say mutiny, but it's not too far off either. So Shaw wakes up, as I understand it, as it has been told to me. So Shaw wakes up. He realizes what's going on. He goes to the bridge, and he's really pissed. And just as he gets to the bridge, we hear that a shuttlecraft is leaving. And obviously, it's Riker and Picard who are in the shuttle and fly off to go to the rest of the way. So why doesn't Shaw stop them? You've got they've stolen a shuttlecraft basically, and he could very easily just turn to the helm and say, lock a tractor beam onto that shuttle. And then after the tractor beam's on, say, transporter room, beam the occupants of the shuttle bay to the brig. And then the show would be over right there. But he doesn't for some reason. Now he's got every motivation to, because again, they've basically hijacked his ship and taken it to this place. They've stolen a shuttle. And he made it clear he was hostile to Picard and Riker and didn't like them before they had even done anything. So why doesn't he take any action to stop them? He doesn't. Well, he doesn't because if he doesn't, then the plot can't happen. So he just sort of stands there and sputters while they fly away in a shuttle. I mean, that's bad writing to me. It's bad writing. So why are people saying this show is well written? I just don't get it. And then was there anything else? Yeah. So I mean, I think. Um, oh, yeah, okay. So Brian Hepbur's putting the quote up. Just how many of our ships were lost? 39. And a loss of life, I believe, at nearly 11,000. Yeah. So, like I said, it's into the five figures, low five figures. One wonders how much you can sleep at night having caused so much destruction. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my point. Thank you, Brian, for putting that up there. So, I think a lot of this is just member berries. Again, I've watched a couple of scenes, and again, for what people have told me, there's lots of Easter eggs. Like I think at one point there's a scene where they're looking at that picture of the Enterprise that was in Picard's office, and other things. I've watched the scene, I guess, where the Titan A leaves space dock, and the way it's shot, and even the music that's playing, it feels very reminiscent of James Horner's score from Star Trek 3. And it's obvious they're emulating that. And I mean, it's nice, but again, I mean, I don't think that overcomes all the problems that this script seems to have. And again, this is just in one episode. Now, maybe it gets better as it goes along. Like I say, I haven't watched all the episodes in this series, but just going off what I've heard and seen from this first episode is not that good. Is it better than what we've seen so far? I guess maybe, but again, that's kind of a low bar. I mean, you're kind of damning with faint praise. It's like I saw a title of one video of someone who was talking about it. It was like, just because it's not awful doesn't mean it's good or something like that. And I think that's what this is. I think people just they want it to be good. And again, this show's it's kind of giving them, it's kind of goosing them and with their dopamine, with the musical cues and all the Easter eggs. Hey, here's a Constitution class ship leaving space dock. You like that, don't you? Hey, here's that picture of the Enterprise D from Picard's office. You remember that, right? And I don't know. It just feels very manipulative to me. It's like, yeah, that's nice, but I'd rather you make a good show rather than just pull all these tricks. Because, oh, and another thing, and I don't think this is going to spoil too much. I don't know, but apparently in this first episode, you find out that Crusher has a son, and the son has a British accent. Apparently, the actor speaks in a British accent. Okay, well, again, in the first episode, they don't reveal who the son is. I'm going to go ahead and predict that this is Picard's son, because again, it's like it's another callback. They're calling back to Star Trek 2 with Kirk and David, where Kirk meets the son that he's never known, and it's kind of the same thing here. I'm betting you. I'm betting that this is going to turn out to be Picard's son that he never knew about, or if he did know, he never met him. And so they're going to kind of do that arc. And now I've seen pictures of the actor. I don't know how old the actor is, but he seems to be. I'd put him in his late 20s somewhere, maybe 30 at the most, and probably not even that. Now Picard is supposed to be 90, at least 90. I think he was supposed to be 90 back in like the first season. So probably more like 92 now. But okay, so assuming this guy's even 30, which he's probably not even that old, that means Picard's in his early 60s when he fathered this guy. And Beverly, I don't know how much younger she is than Picard. I'm guessing 5 to 10 years. Well, let's say 7 years or something. Oh, well, let's just make it 10. Let's say she's 10 years younger. Uh, so then that means she's got to be pushing 80, which means she was like in her early 50s when she had this kid. And I guess you could argue, okay, it's the future and they have like medical techniques and stuff and treatments that can extend fertility or something. I suppose you could say that. But it just feels like this is just here to try and copy Star Trek 2. It's like honestly, it's like the whole thing with Shaw. The whole thing with Shaw kind of reminded me of Jellicoe from Chain of Command, where you've got this other Starfleet captain, and he's kind of brusque and kind of rude, and you're obviously supposed to, our heroes are kind of in conflict with him. So obviously, we're supposed to sort of side with the characters we know with our heroes and say, "Oh, this other captain's a jerk." But if you step back and look at it objectively, it's really kind of like they're being the jerks, and the Jellicoe, or in this case, Shaw, is being perfectly reasonable. It's just they're the ones being the jerks, really. And again, it just felt like a callback to that to a large extent. And let's see, what else can I think of here? Okay, so Rafi. Now Rafi's in this. She's apparently the only character who's kind of uh, been brought back from the previous seasons. Okay, whatever. I guess you could do worse. Again, like I said earlier, it would make perfect sense if they hired Ramos and his ship to take them to this place. So why not bring Ramos back? Whatever. And she's on. It's the thing is that apparently in the message that Beverly gives Picard early on, she says, "Don't trust anyone in Starfleet." So this is another sort of Starfleet is evil storyline, and that just seems to be a theme that the Kurtzman Trek shows just keep coming back to over and over again. And it's really tiresome. Now, I saw or heard someone somewhere mentioning maybe this would pick up from that old episode Conspiracy from the first season of Star Trek, where they've got the creatures that are inside the Starfleet officers, and they're sort of covertly invading Starfleet and taking it over from within. If they were to do that, that would be pretty cool. I got to admit, if they did that, I'd be very intrigued to see a story like that. But the thing is, in a way, they already kind of did that story, because what happened was, see, if I understand it, that episode Conspiracy was actually connected to the final episode of the first season where the Romulans come back. And, the Starfleet and the Romulans have both found these areas where there's evidence of entire cities or star bases just being removed, like scooped up and taken by some sort of unknown party. And the Romulans and Starfleet are both trying to figure out what it is. They have a confrontation, and they realize that neither side really knows what's going on, and they just sort of end it there. Now, as I understand it, what was supposed to happen in the second season was going to start with like a 2 or 3 part story, which was going to have the Romulans and Starfleet working together. It was going to be revealed that there was this race of insect like aliens, and they were the ones responsible for the star bases disappearing, right? For the bases and cities being destroyed. And they were actually going to be connected to those creatures that were infiltrating Starfleet, the little creatures. The problem was they had a writer's strike in Hollywood, and therefore they didn't have writers available to write these episodes. And so a lot of the early episodes of the second season are actually old screenplays from Star Trek Phase 2, the canceled show back in the 70s. That they just had a bunch of old screenplays like laying around in their drawer somewhere. So they wound up dropping that storyline, and it didn't happen. They later picked up that storyline, but they had the Borg being the ones who were responsible instead of these insect-like aliens. They were planning to bring them back, but they decided not to do these insect-like creatures because with the technology at the time, the only way to do them would be to do them like in stop motion, I think, and they felt it wouldn't look good. And they also, I think, didn't have the budget to do it well. So they just dropped that, and they wound up going with the Borg, which was probably the better way to go. All right. So what else have we got with Picard? So a lot of people, and again, a lot of people who like the show, they're people whose opinions I kind of respect. People like Robert Meyer Burnett and Dave Cullen. I think even the Critical Drinker has spoken very kindly about Picard. And again, it just kind of baffles me because you look at the show and there's just so much that doesn't make sense. So much where the plot only happens because people do things only because the plot requires them to, not because it makes sense. Picard and Riker trying to take this Federation ship or basically hijack a Federation ship instead of just hiring one, which again they've done before on this show. And then Shaw letting Riker and Picard just get away for no good reason, even though they've stolen a shuttlecraft and hijacked his ship. And it's just baffling to me. All right. Let me see what else is there. Ant-Man, I've already talked about Ant-Man. I don't want to talk about Ant-Man anymore. All right, let's go ahead and do a little Super Team Family blog. I guess that'll be something we can do. Let me stop sharing this. And I'll bring that up. Okay, so this is where I left off last time. So let's go ahead and move on to the next cover here. And I'm assuming you've watched my previous live streams and know what this is, but this is the Super Team Family blog. This is a blog done by a fellow. He does these sort of photoshopped covers. He makes fictional team ups that never really occurred in the comics. Okay, and so the next one we got here is Batman and the Herculoids. And Herculoids is one of my all-time favorite cartoons. I used to watch it as a kid. It was when was Herculoids originally on? I think that was originally on in like the late 60s, early 70s. And I watched it some as a kid growing up in the 70s. I've long thought that Herculoids would make a great movie, and I'm really kind of baffled that no one in Hollywood has thought to do a Herculoids movie. I think that would work really well. Okay, so next, Batman and the Human Fly. Okay, so Human Fly is a Marvel character. And this is just kind of a wild story. So the Human Fly was a real person. He was a sort of a stuntman, sort of. He was supposed to be a kind of evil Knievel like guy. He would do these crazy stunts. And as he had a short-lived Marvel series. It only ran like maybe 5 or 6 issues, I think. But the blurb they'd always had on the cover of the comics was always, the most incredible hero of all because he's real. And a few years back, I actually decided to I went to Wikipedia to look up the Human Fly and see just what was his story because I never really knew. So apparently, this guy was Canadian. Um, and as I remember reading the Wikipedia, I mean, he basically did, I think, only one stunt. he he made some like personal appearances, I think, on TV, and there was a lot of hype about the stunt he was going to do, and there was a lot of hype around him. Again, this is in the days when Evil Knievel was popular, so stuntmen like this were kind of in vogue at the time. And there was a lot of hype built up around this first stunt he did. And I don't remember what it was, but anyway, he did the stunt and it didn't go well. It went wrong and he was badly injured. And that was basically it. he, he did never do anything again. He was like one and done. And that was all. Still, he got a comic, though. I mean, how many of us can say we had a Marvel comic? Okay, so next, Batman and the Human Torch. I mean, this is a fine team up. Not one you would really think of. That's a Jim Aparo Batman. I don't recognize the Human Torch illustration, so I'm not sure what cover that is from. I think that's supposed to be. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be the Golden Age Human Torch or the Fantastic Four version. Okay, so Batman and the Hulk. And that's cool. Of course, Batman and the Hulk have actually crossed paths in the comics back in the late 70s, or maybe it was early 80s. I think it was right around like 80, 81. Of course, in the 70s, they did that first big sort of crossover between Marvel and DC, that Superman Spider-Man team up, which that came out, I think, in 76. And that was hugely popular, sold really well. So, like about a year or two later, they did another one, a second Superman Spider-Man. And then a year or two after that, they did a Batman and the Hulk team up, which never made sense to me. I always thought Superman and the Hulk or Batman and Spider-Man would make more sense. But I think they went with Batman because they'd already done Superman twice. And they went with the Hulk because the Hulk had that TV show at the time. This is when the Hulk TV show was still on. And I think that was canceled around 82, 83, maybe something like that. So somewhere in that span. And as I recall, it was okay. I never owned it. I had a friend who had it, so I got to read it at one point. Okay, so Batman and the Inhumans. And, this would be interesting. I'm trying to remember what that Batman figure is vaguely familiar, but I can't remember what series or what cover that is from. And I don't recognize the Inhumans illustration either. They had a series back in the 70s, so I'm guessing it's a cover from one of those issues. Okay, Batman and the Invaders. So the Invaders were basically a group of the Golden Age Marvel characters who team up. Uh, for a long time, Marvel's Golden Age was really kind of not filled out or not really embellished much. But in the aside from like Captain America and Namor and the Submariner, I mean, they had other characters back then, but most of them were ignored. They really didn't get much attention. Now, in the 70s, Roy Thomas started this book called The Invaders, where it was Human Torch, Captain America, and Namor teaming up together on a team, along with Bucky and the Torch's sidekick Toro. Eventually, some other Golden Age characters would join too. And he's got Batman teaming up with them. Now, I recognize this Batman figure. This is from an anniversary issue, I believe, of Detective Comics. I think it's like the 400th issue. It's one I've been meaning to do a video on because it's a pretty good issue. But is this figure is by Don Newton. That's the artist for this Batman. And Don Newton, I think, is one of the underappreciated Batman artists. He was doing Batman quite a bit back in like the late 70s to mid 80s. And I think he was really good. Of course, I'm probably favorable towards him because again, some of those issues he drew were some of the first stuff that I ever read of Batman. Okay, next, Batman and the Invisible Girl. Again, so another Fantastic Four character. And it's got Batman in this casket. Again, I don't recognize the issue that's from. Now, the illustration in the front, this is Invisible Girl, and she's fighting, I believe this is the Brute. And the Brute is a character. He's basically Reed Richards from another universe, an alternate universe. It's kind of one where Reed is basically evil, and he's Reed Richards, but he's kind of like a combination of Reed Richards and the Hulk. He's Reed Richards, but he can turn into this kind of Hulk-like creature. Or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I guess you could describe it that way. All right, what do we got next here? All right, Batman in South Park. Okay, sure. Oh my God, I killed Robin, you bastard. Uh, so is this? I'm trying to remember which artist this is, but I can't think of the name right now. I'm afraid. Okay, Batman and the Justice Society. I mean, that's cool. Of course, Batman has worked with the Justice Society many times, so this is hardly a novel idea. So this cover, most of this cover is actually from a series called Secret Origins. I think after Crisis, DC did started the series called Secret Origins, where they basically could tell revamped versions of the origins of their characters post Crisis. And one of the early issues was the Justice Society. Well, dang it. Okay, hold on. Let me get back here. I hate it when that happens. Okay, here we're back. All right, so the artist here is Jerry Ordway on the Justice Society. That's a Jim Aparo Batman though. All right, Batman and the Legion of Super Pets. And the Super Pets, they're a concept you don't see DC use a whole lot. Of course, we did get the movie recently that sort of was a riff on this idea, although they had some different characters. Really, the only character that was the same was Crypto. But during the Silver Age, they had a group of super animals who worked together. So you got Crypto the super dog, Streaky the super cat, Comet the super horse, Bibbo the super chimp, and this is Prody. And Prody's, they call it a pet, but Prody's an alien. He's not an alien or an animal. And I think they were kind of connected more with Supergirl. I think you would be more likely to see them with Supergirl or with the Legion of Superheroes than you would with, say, Superman. Okay, Batman and the Losers. I mean, that would be cool, I guess. The Losers, of course, are a group of characters. They were basically a group of soldiers who had all had near-death experiences, but had survived, and they were all grouped together on this team. And they were, I think, more of a Silver Age, Bronze Age group. There's been an updated version of them that was more of like a group of secret agents or like rogue CIA agents or something like that. They actually had a movie, I think, that had Chris Evans in it. I've never seen the whole thing. All right, Batman and Martian Manhunter. Okay, sure. Batman and the Martian Manhunter have worked together plenty of times. Batman and the Marvel Universe. Okay, well, I mean, it's hard to really give an opinion on that. Of course, obviously, him working with Marvel characters is going to be cool. Let's see. What else have we got? Oh, okay, this is a good one. Batman and the Master of Kung Fu. And this is a Shang-Chi cover, I believe, that he's photoshopped Batman into. I don't know which cover the Batman comes from, but this would be really cool. Oh, hello, Masters Maniac Mexico. Thank you for stopping by. But yeah, this would be a really cool team up, something you'd love to see. Of course, Shang-Chi is one of the few characters that could really give Batman a run for his money in a fight. In fact, you probably would say from pure martial arts skill, I think you would probably say Shang-Chi is actually probably better than Batman. At least I would say so. Batman and the Micronauts. And the Micronauts, it's funny it mentions the Micronauts because in my review of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which is up on my channel, please check it out. I mentioned that this place they go to, this sort of microscopic universe. I mean, I think it's supposed to be the microverse, although they never call it that, which I don't understand. But it's the same basic concept. If you shrink down small enough and go subatomic, eventually you get to a point where you pass this sort of into another universe. And that's where the Micronauts originate from. And I was actually kind of hoping that we might get some Easter eggs of the Micronauts in the movie. I didn't notice any, but I may have just overlooked them. Marvel really can't use the Micronauts anymore. The Micronauts were based on a toy line, line of action figures and toys that were on sale back in like the tail end of the 70s and very early 80s. They weren't around that long, maybe like a 5-year period, something like that. And Marvel had a license to do a comic based on the toys, and the comic was actually pretty successful. It started again around I think 78, 79, somewhere around there, and it ran up into the mid 80s. And the series overall, particularly like the early issues, it's actually a damn good comic. It's really good. In fact, I doing a review of the first year of Micronauts is actually an idea I've had for a while. Okay, Batman and the New Gods. Um, I mean, obviously, Batman has worked with the New Gods in the comics, so I mean that's not exactly a surprise. So we've got Light Ray here, and this is Orion. So if you think Orion looks odd, back in so they did the original New Gods series, and Jack Kirby did the original in the early 70s. And then somewhere around, I think 78, 79, they did a second series called Return of the New Gods. And in that, for some reason, the artist, and I think it was Don Newton, who I mentioned earlier, I think he was the artist on that book. He did a redesign of Orion, which gave him a more kind of conventional superhero looking costume. Which, I mean, the costume's fine, but I don't know why they changed it. And this series didn't last very long. It ran for a few months, and then it was one of the series that was canceled in the DC implosion of 1979, the infamous DC implosion, which I've done a video on my channel. Check that out. And but after that series, when they eventually brought the New Gods back, they ignored this design and went back to the original Kirby design, which I think was a good idea. I mean, I like the costume, but I just don't. They should have given it to a new character rather than making it changing Orion's look. Okay, Batman and the new Teen Titans. So I can say that this cover is a George Perez cover. In fact, this is which issue? It's one of the early issues of the new Teen Titans. I think this is like issue 4. In one of the early issues, the Teen Titans fight the Justice League. I think it's issue 3 or 4. And that's the cover to this issue. What they've done, or what he's done, is he's basically photoshopped out all the other league members. They had like Superman and Wonder Woman and the Flash, and I think a couple other Justice League members here too. And he took them out so it looks like they're just going to fight Batman. Okay, Batman and the Newsboy Legion. And the Newsboy Legion is a Jack Kirby creation, and it was, around in the Golden Age. Uh, One of the DC characters he created was this character called Guardian, who's sort of a street level urban vigilante type guy who carries a shield. And Kirby also created this group of kids called the Newsboy Legion, who are kind of like his sidekicks. And they eventually got their own stories in addition. After the original stories, they haven't been used much. They've popped up in some form or another over the years. And Batman and the Human Torch again. Okay, I think this is supposed to be the Golden Age Torch. Yeah, with Robin and Toro. Yeah, so Toro was the Golden Age Human Torch's sidekick. So, and it's funny, there's kind of a theme with this list because you've got the different Fantastic Four characters, which includes the Human Torch. You had the Invaders earlier, which has the Golden Age Human Torch in it. Let's see. And this is the Torch and his partner trapping us in a ring of fire. I don't know what covers these are from. These are probably pretty old covers, and I'm afraid I don't know them. But sure, that would be a cool team up. All right, so I'm coming up on an hour here, so I'm probably going to go ahead and wrap things up. I want to thank everyone who stopped by to see the stream, and those who will wind up catching the stream on the replay. And have a good night.